Allen Ginsberg misquoted Plato, and even though Plato never said this, I still love this quote. When the modes of the music change, the walls of the city shake. Rock and roll has been the soundtrack of youth rebellion for almost 8 decades. It is one of the United States' most powerful cultural exports to the world. Rock and roll is not just about music, but the moment it gripped a post-war generation of American teenagers, its anthems became words to live by, and future generations would never be the same. They stopped accepting the status quo, and their outside-the-box thinking contributed to accelerated technological advancement. I like to think that Marlon Brando gave birth to rock and roll in 1953 in the movie The Wild One. When his character is asked,
"What are you rebelling against?"
he answers,
"What do you got?"
The more passionate, proletariat sector of the 1950s youth gave birth to traditional rock culture just as the first hits of Latinx rock and roll appeared. Cuban mambo, the favorite music of zoot-suited pachucos, jump blues, loved by greasers, and African-American rhythms were combined to create the 1958 hit Tequila by the Champs. In 1958, Link Ray, a Shawnee, had a hit with Rumble, the only instrumental song that has ever been banned from the radio. E Street Band guitarist Steven Van Zandt said of its raw, angry sound, Link Ray wrote the anthem for juvenile delinquency. There was no self-respecting high school cafeteria where at least a food fight didn't break out when Rumble came on the speakers. In the 1960s, popular music took at least 2 marked directions in sound and sensibility. One was the folk-oriented wooden acoustic music of artists such as Bob Dylan, Richie Havens. The other was the electric-charged sounds of the British invasion, delivered by the Beatles, the Kinks, and African-American guitar god Jimi Hendrix, who gained fame after moving to England. Hendrix, who also claimed Cherokee heritage, expanded the language of guitar and immortalized himself with the instrumental anti-war hymn Machine Gun and his version of the Star-Spangled Banner, performed at Woodstock in 1969. In both the Jimi Hendrix Experience and his band of gypsies, Hendrix incorporated beats reminiscent of traditional Native American drumming. One of the British invaders' major innovations was the notion that rock and roll no longer needed the roll, it could just rock. The distinction is later expressed in the sound of Led Zeppelin, Humble Pie, The Who, and Black Sabbath. In the 1970s, war-painted New Yorker Ace Frehley, whose mother was a Cherokee, became the quintessential heavy metal guitarist for the band Kiss. They sold millions of albums and tickets around the world and influenced countless loud rockers. Although they sold millions of records and concert tickets, heavy metal acts were heard mainly on college radio for years. Commercial radio activity avoided metal, particularly shying away from bands like Wasp, led by the politically outspoken, often controversial Blackfoot Blackie Lawless. But in November of 1983, the album Mental Health by Quiet Riot, a Los Angeles band including Cuban-born bassist Rudy Sarzo and Mexican-born lead guitarist Carlos Cavasso, displaced the Police's Synchronicity album from #1 position on the Billboard Top 200 album chart, and the single Come On Feel the Noise became the first heavy metal song to reach the top 5 of the Billboard Hot 100. Sarzo went on to perform with Ozzy Osbourne, Whitesnake, Dio, Blue Oyster Cult, and many others. Following Quiet Riot's success, many metal bands came into the mainstream market, including Twisted Sister with New Yorican singer-guitarist Eddie Ojeda. Notable Latinx metal players also include Rats bassist Cuban Juan Crocher, Mexican-American Robert Trujillo, bassist for Suicidal Tendencies and Metallica, Bon Jovi drummer Tico Torres, whose parents immigrated from Cuba, and Slayer's Chilean-born bassist vocalist Tom Araya, and Cuban-born drummer Dave Lombardo. One of the most politically outspoken and influential bands in the world, Rage Against the Machine, fronted by Mexican-American vocalist Zach De La Rocha, was known for mixing rap and metal and supporting efforts such as Salvadorian FMLN. Tampa, Florida developed a strong death metal scene in the mid-80s with iconic bands such as Cannibal Corpse, Deicide, and Morbid Angel. Salvadorian-born drummer Pete Sandoval of Terrorizer and Morbid Angel is known as the father of blast beat, a rapid-fire drumming style played with 2 bass drums reminiscent of semi-automatic weapon. It's the signature beat of death and black metal bands. Black metal likely began in Newcastle, England, with Venom, in an openly anti-Christian outfit, and was adopted by Scandinavian kids disgusted with the Catholic Church's pedophilia scandal. Similar philosophies have taken root in Latin America and Native American metal scenes, giving rise to indigenous black metal and res metal. Heard mostly on Navajo reservations, res metal is an angry and dark, yet powerful expression of longing for cultural respect and survival. The most successful indigenous metal band is Simican, which means all the life, and Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, which is still spoken in Mexico and parts of the U.S. Southwest. Using Nahuatl instruments and names and singing in Nahuatl, they have played the world's biggest metal festivals, including France's Hellfest and Germany's Wacken Open Air. I may even venture that just like African Americans protected and exported gospel by using rock and roll, Native Americans are protecting their heritage using hard rock. But that's going to require further development to test.